Good morning, honorable members, our guests. You are all welcome. Just some house rules. Honorable members, the minister and the deputy minister will use the podium here. And members can speak from wherever they are. If they want to come to the podium, they can. But please do not be behind that camera there. Be this other side if you want to speak from your seat. But the minister and the deputy minister should come and speak here. Because we don't have clocks, as usual, I will indicate when you have 1 minute left, and then the expiry time will follow. I will now ask the secretary to read the order.
Debate on vote number 29, Energy Appropriation Bill.
I now call on the Honorable the Minister of Energy, Minister Jumaat.
Nkoska Cool House Chairperson, Dumelang Lebo Me Lebo Re. Honorable Deputy Minister, Ambassador Tembisile Majola, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Honorable Chairperson of the Select Committee, members of the Portfolio Committee on Energy, Cabinet colleagues, leadership of our trade unions, captains of industry, Acting Director General, senior officials, leadership of our state-owned entities, invited guests, comrades, ladies and gentlemen. I want to greet you firstly in the name of our beloved leader, former President, the late President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, whose birthday we celebrated. I ask that we debate this matter with the same spirit and intensity with which he fought against injustice, but also with the same degree of humility that Madiba would have shown. I am pleased to record that the department, together with a number of private sector partners, heeded the clarion call to clean up for Madiba by visiting the Mamelodi Tateni Community Center and the Kiddos Educare Center in Soweto. Besides cleaning up and painting the facilities, the department was able to install solar water heaters and efficient lighting in each of these venues. One of our agencies, Sanedi, also announced that they will build a learning center for preschool children at the Children's Home. Chairperson, on the 17th of June, on the occasion of the first State of the Nation address of our 5th democratic administration, President Zuma affirmed the imperatives to address our country's energy challenges in order to create a favorable environment for economic growth and development. To set the tone, I must repeat what the President has said. He first recognized the problem in saying that we need to respond decisively to the country's energy constraints in order to create a conducive environment for growth. Furthermore, he said that this situation calls for radical transformation of the energy sector to develop a sustainable energy mix that comprises coal, solar, wind, hydro, gas, and nuclear energy. The direction is clear. We need no longer debates. We no longer need to debate the matter. We must tackle the energy constraints, and we must do so in a way which properly balances the many alternatives that we have. My task today is to show you how we plan to do so in the ministry and department. We accept the responsibility that our people have placed on the shoulders of the leading party through their vote on the 7th of May. Our role is to keep the lights on, but not at all cost, and the cars on the road, and we will do our best to ensure that this happens. But I also want to ensure that energy is something that is understood by ordinary people, that it is accessible and affordable, and that we build a national consensus on how we are going to take our country forward. This is in part a problem for the scientists and the engineers to produce more energy, especially clean energy. But it is also something that each one of us can help with as we try to use energy more efficiently. It is not just a challenge for government, It is a problem for the private sector, it is a problem for the public, and we must solve it collectively. That is why, and I hope you have noticed, I've already advertised for nominations to an expert panel, which I plan to convene. I hope all interested parties will put forward names of suitable people with the right expertise who can help us to bring about the radical economic transformation we desire. This will not be a party political structure, but a true advisory council of experts. We are committed to the countrywide rollout of our economic and social infrastructure program, especially in the energy sector. We see this as a major instrument to catalyze and spur positive economic growth and job creation, as well as making a positive difference in the lives of citizens, whether they live in the town on the grid or in a rural village and get electricity from alternative off-grid sources. As a starting point, we have taken steps to ensuring that there is security of coal supplies to existing and future power stations. We have also set ambitious targets to produce additional cleaner energy and ensure energy self-sufficiency in the future. We further stated that both traditional and green energy will be expanded to ensure a platform for growth and social inclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, this will include the use of nuclear power for both base load energy generation, which will be in safe and environmentally sustainable manner. The manifesto of the ruling party states that additional energy will be generated through the completion of large power stations and that solar and wind power will feed into the electricity grid to increase our generation capacity and promote environmental sustainability. We will intensify work to ensure that further hydroelectric energy will be secured domestically and regionally for our national grid. Over the term of this government, over 1 million homes will be equipped with solar water heaters, ensuring cheaper hot water and lower energy use for more than 7 million South Africans. An additional 1.5 million households will also be connected to energy sources, either through the grid or through non-grid means. Lastly, the pace of oil and gas exploration, including shale gas exploration by the state and other players in the industry, will be intensified as part of the country's effort to ensure national self-sufficiency and energy security, and again, whilst actively promoting environmental sustainability. Honourable Chairperson, the energy sector has been shown to be an economic game changer globally. For South Africa, energy is the catalyst to revolutionize our economy and drive economic transformation. However, the current global energy situation is faced with many uncertainties. These include the complex environmental and climate change matters in which energy is a major player. There are also the persistent global economic challenges we still face, and some of our major trade partners, as well as continuing turmoil in the Middle East and the Ukraine, will continue impacting on us. All of these impact on our energy situation and therefore our economy. We need to be responsive to all of these circumstances as we chart a course into the future. These uncertainties and how we respond to them, however, remind us that as a nation, South Africa needs to engage in a national dialogue about our energy future. How do we meet the imperative of ensuring a sustained and secure supply of energy, especially cleaner energy? In taking on this debate, we will continue to build and strengthen relations within SADC, the African continent. We have just returned from the BRICS summit in Brazil, where our relations with these major players were further strengthened, and we will be guided by the experience of these major economies as we move forward. Of course, we will also engage other countries both in the north and the south, which can help us to develop a common perspective on energy. The department operates in this dynamic global environment, but we must recognize that existing infrastructure constraints, some of which are the result of inadequate infrastructure development planning, makes this task a difficult one. Declining budgets, rating downgrades, and the shortage of skills in the energy sector all contribute to rising electricity costs and volatile oil prices. which contribute to the critical energy situation. These factors, many of which are out of our hands, place severe constraints on our supply chain and must work together collectively to address these challenges. A better coordination, seamless interaction with Eskom remains an imperative. The Department of Energy has made a number of strides since its formal establishment in 2010, and these have contributed to the overall development agenda of our country. I do not wish to repeat what has already been said about good stories, but reflect briefly on some of the key areas of work undertaken. A revised regulatory framework for facilitating the introduction of new generation capacity through independent power producers will be consolidated. This has already culminated in reaching financial close and commencing with the construction of 1,000 megawatts of open-cycle gas turbines at Avon in KwaZulu-Natal and Kuga in the Eastern Cape, as well as 3,900 megawatts of renewable energy plants based on solar, biomass, hydro, wind, and landfill gas. It gives me pleasure to indicate that out of the 28 IPPs approved during Window 1, a total of 14 generation plants have been completed, producing over 600 megawatts of green power into the national grid. A new household electrification strategy was approved by Cabinet in June 2013 to address electrification backlogs and to ensure universal access by 2025. This will be done by means of utilizing grid extension, but also by means of non-grid PV solar systems. This is in line with the proposals of the NDP for reaching universal access. However, a progressive rollout program is being implemented through the new household electrification strategy to reach the target of universal access earlier. The electrification target for 2013-14 was to grid and electrify 260,000 households. We have achieved a total of 292,714 and an additional 14,059 non-grid connections were also implemented. During the past financial year, a total thus of 306,773 households received access to electricity for the first time, which is 46,773 connections above target. We check these figures. In the main, this is due to the good cooperation and support from Eskom, municipalities, metros, and the private sector. In addition to this, a number of substations and lines have been upgraded to further ensure that capacity exists for this expansion. We implemented the regulatory accounting system for the petroleum sector, which is used to determine appropriate margins for petrol at wholesale, retail, secondary storage, and secondary distribution level. It also seeks to introduce transparency into the market, as well as root out inefficiencies, cross-subsidization, and uncontrolled costs. This provides certainty to investors with regard to the return on assets throughout the petroleum value chain. I must, however, hasten to add that the rollout of the system has not been as smooth as we would have expected, with the power relations between oil companies and retail companies continuing to be a challenge. We intend to engage with this matter urgently. With regard to the development of our gas resources, including the regional gas opportunities in neighboring countries and our own shale gas resources, a draft of the gas utilization master plan is being finalized. Energy efficiency is at the core of our energy security strategy, given its cost effectiveness, speed of deployment, and job creation potential. Interventions in public buildings, industry, and the residential sectors are pillars in the energy efficient strategy and action plan, which we have recently revised. The completed energy efficiency target monitoring system provides a platform for quantifying the responsiveness of our energy efficiency efforts. The liquefied petroleum gas maximum refinery gate price regulatory framework discussion document has been developed with the intention to facilitate the importation of LPG, especially during supply constraints in the winter section or the winter season. The roadmap for the implementation of the nuclear procurement program is progressing well, and the department is currently working with sister departments and entities to finalize work in this regard. Honourable members, I am pleased to announce that for the previous financial year, the department was appropriated 6.5 billion and spent 99.6% of this allocated budget. The appropriation for this financial year is 7.4 billion, with 93% of this amount being earmarked for transfer to municipalities and state-owned entities. However, this time we cannot rely on transfers and after the transfers a clean audit. There has to be the monitoring and the evaluation of the money which is transferred. We cannot be happy with a transfer alone and then automatically we receive a clean audit. Doesn't work that way. We need value for the taxpayers' money. So it is clear that the actual delivery of energy, if it is largely in the hands of statutory bodies, that those statutory bodies do have good governance and that they function efficiently and effectively. The 2014-15 appropriation is 14% higher than the 2013-14 final appropriation. The increased allocation will enable the expansion of the Integrated National Electrification Program, which has to increase the number of households connected to the electricity grid. The INEP therefore received an allocation of 4.1 billion rand, with Eskom and municipalities allocated 2.5 billion and 1.6 billion respectively. A further 96 million is allocated to the non-grid electrification program. Through Eskom and municipalities, we must improve the implementation of energy efficiency and expand the use of clean energy technologies. We will continue rolling out the solar water heater project, which seeks to make solar water units more affordable. To this end, Eskom will use their 1.6 billion for the installation of more than 200,000 solar water heating units. On the nuclear front, 850 million has been allocated to the department and its relevant agencies in order to undertake further research and development, especially when it comes to the safety matters. Regulations for the handling of hazardous material in terms of international obligations and the development of nuclear policies and legislation will be put in place to ensure the peaceful use of nuclear energy and pursuing our international agenda. In line with the injunctions of the National Development Plan, the department is central to the processes of developing policies and innovative energy strategies to build this economy. We are expected to implement programs which will ensure that South Africa has a sector that promotes economic growth and development, fosters social equity through expanded access, as well as pursuing environmental sustainability. Our mandate is unambiguous. We will ensure energy security for a growing and job-creating economy. I repeat, we will ensure energy security for a growing and job-creating economy. We have to be unambiguous. We have to be unambiguous on what is expected from the Ministry of Energy and the department. The Energy Master Plan has been developed to crystallize the immediate actions that the department and the entire energy sector will have to undertake. In undertaking a comprehensive revision of the entire sector, and where necessary, will bring about structural changes within our department and the sector. I thus want to thank our Deputy Ministers, Oliphant and Tabete, who have been really strategic, Minister Klasa, who have been consistent in their support in the structural changes of the sector. In doing so, we will be guided by the need for further diversification of our energy mix. Wind and solar energy sources are growing dramatically, especially in the Northern Cape. We have to double our efforts in these. Together with imported and locally sourced natural gas, as well as introduction of 9.6 gigawatt of nuclear power, we will lay the foundations for a new mix of national energy sources. Localization has to be at the foundation of this development. If South Africans can produce locally, we do not need to rely on imports, thus creating more and more jobs. We are directed to intensify the integrated national electrification program in pursuit of universal access. Our IPP program will remain another key area of engagement and focus. The IPP program must also focus on local content, local skills development, and local planning. We will continue to consult and refine the ISMO bill. This will seek to provide a better regulatory environment for power providers. Once it is ready, we will go through an extensive consultative process to bring all stakeholders on board. Allow me to highlight some of the key programs and initiatives, and I can see the ISMO bill is already causing quite excitement. As enjoined by the President in the State of the Nation address, my immediate priority is to ensure that the integrated energy plan is finalized. This plan must be geared to address the short, medium, and long-term energy requirements, must be supported by effective policies, institutions, governance systems, and regulation within a competitive market system. Given the overall global energy challenges, one of the key objectives of the revised integrated energy plan will be to look at multiple and alternative energy sources. South Africa cannot afford to find itself at the mercy of geopolitical developments over which we have no control, so we must find sources that ensures energy security and our country's sovereignty. It is therefore necessary to reflect on the questions we identified as being critical. Firstly, our efficiency levels has to improve. The diversification of our energy mix towards a low-carbon economy. We must finalize the nuclear power option. The future of electricity tariff increases must be stabilized. Universal access to modern energy technologies for the unelectrified. Our energy plan must address the plight of rural women and youth and lift them out of unemployment. The introduction of new power stations across a range of technologies is outlined in the integrated resource plan. We will further engage in the decentralization of energy provision. In the period up to 2013, the integrated resource plan makes provision for 9.6 gigawatts, nuclear power, 6.3 gigawatts of coal, 11.4 gigawatts from renewables, and 11.0 gigawatts from other generation. The implementation of the plan is well underway. This is evidenced by the IPP bidding program, which was approved the provision of 3,625 megawatts of capacity from independent power producers. We must attract international and local investments, and for that, we need about 120 billion. We are confident that this will boost employment and growth, and we know that we can further improve on this. We have no intention of abandoning the coal option, but we are determined to find cleaner technologies that will reduce the adverse environmental impact associated with greenhouse gas emissions from coal generation. Institutionally, we have formed the Carbon Capture and Storage Leadership Forum, which serves a critical role in fast-tracking our technology research efforts in collaboration with other countries. Young people need to develop their research capabilities, and if it needs be, we have to send young students abroad or in the continent to develop their skills. Our research capacity has to be improved. the South African National Energy Development Institute, SANEDI, which is our state-owned entity responsible for energy research, leads this program. SANEDI must increase its intake of learnerships. You may not be aware that for the past 5 years, underground coal gasification has been underway at Matimba Power Station. This program is aimed at developing the technology needed to exploit our extensive coal reserves in the form of gas. Apart from our local research stations, I'm sure that Medupi and Kusile power stations representing our technology,
Honorable Minister, you have 1 minute.
I've noticed, are already for the state-of-the-art carbon capture and storage processes. However, before I sit, we cannot be burdened with we cannot continue the burden of not knowing when these projects will be completed. So the electrification program will continue. We aim to finalize at the end of this calendar year the first draft of the electrification master plan to ensure that universal access can be reached by 2025. Honorable Chairperson, I will conclude by thanking all the relevant parties when I do the concluding remarks. For now, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We'll now call upon the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Energy, Honorable Majola.
Honorable Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Minister, other ministers and deputy ministers present, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends. I here rise on behalf of the African National Congress in support of the 2014-2015 budget for the Department of Energy. Honorable Chairperson, let me begin by congratulating the Honorable Tina Joemat-Pettersson on her appointment as the new Minister of Energy. Similarly, I also congratulate the Honorable Thembisile Majola on her appointment as the new Deputy Minister of Energy. Honorable Chairperson, I dedicate this speech to Chief Albert John Luthuli, the 8th President General of the African National Congress, one of the first honored bearers of Isitwalandwe Saparangwe, and Africa's first Nobel Peace Laureate who departed 47 years ago on the 21st July, 1967. In his enduring memory and the memory of the legends of others, including our international icon Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, we have begun our work in this, the 5th Democratic Parliament, and indeed in this second phase of our transition led by the ANC, with their enduring inspiration to ensure that our country moves forward with speed and clarity to realize our overall goal of a national democratic society. Chairperson, as someone who was born near a small power station, not far from the banks of the Vaal River, and yet in a community which for many years was deprived of electricity, I'm deeply humbled to stand here as part of those who now have a responsibility over the entirety of our national energy security and supply. This is an enormous responsibility that I hope we will all carry out to the best of our abilities. Let me state at the outset that a week ago, the Portfolio Committee on Energy, despite the time constraints we had, blessed its support for this budget vote. During his State of the Nation address, His Excellency President Jacob Zuma undoubtedly placed energy at the center of his democratic administration. At its 53rd Mangaung conference, the ANC declared that we are now boldly entering a second, more radical phase of our democratic transition from apartheid and colonialism to a national democratic society. This phase will be characterized by more radical socio-economic policies. Consequently, we of the African National Congress come to this fifth democratic parliament with single-mindedness to ensure that this radical second phase finds concrete expression in all the work we do here at Parliament. It is with this in mind that we'll approach our work in the energy sector. In articulating the challenges that our economy and country face, President Jacob Zuma said, and I quote, this situation calls for a radical transformation of the energy sector to develop a sustainable energy mix that comprises coal, solar, wind, hydro, gas, and nuclear energy, close quote. Honorable members, the ANC's policies are clear. Among others, the ANC will pursue the task of building a capable developmental state that intervenes and is capable of leading a process of fundamental social and economic transformation of society. This policy approach will apply to the transformation of the energy sector. This is a commitment we have made, and this is a commitment we will keep. During the deliberations of the Portfolio Committee, we made it clear that the ANC will remain open to constructive engagement and input, but at the end of the day, it is the ANC that was given an overwhelming mandate on the 7th of May to lead our country and its people. Together, we must move South Africa forward faster. Chairperson, there can be no denying that over the last 20 years, especially in the last 5 years, much has been done to bring more energy to our people. Indeed, South Africa is a much better place to live in than it was 20 years ago. This good story applies to the energy sector as well. As in the less than 20 years, the ANC government has extended access to electricity to over 5.8 million households and thus reduced the percentage of households without electricity from about 50% in 1994 to 14% currently. At the same time, we are mindful of the very serious energy constraints our economy and country face. This is partly and perhaps largely because of our own successes. Over the last 20 years, the economy has grown threefold, thereby putting immense pressure on our energy supply. Perhaps faced with the challenges of the same nature, our own international icon, former President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, had this to say, and I quote, "After climbing a hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb," close quote. Honorable Chairperson, as you all know, the energy challenges our country faces are very serious and require urgent and decisive action. Many of these are immediate, while others will confront us in the long term. We have to take action now, but the actions we take today must not compromise the future security and sustainability of our energy supply. In this regard, we agree with one member of this House who says that we have to define the end state vision of our energy sector. We have to assist ESCOM to keep the lights on. At the same time, we need a concerted national effort to conserve our energy, working together with our communities. However, whilst communities are encouraged to use solar and gas, demand management is cross-cutting. It must be led by the state, and it must include business as well. Business must work together with labor to improve productivity and cooperation rather than relying on mechanization, which is a costly substitute to the absorption of labor and may be wasteful from the point of view of our tight energy supply and environmental considerations. When we have no option as a country but to move towards less carbon-intensive electricity production through procuring at least 20,000 megawatts of renewable energy as the NDP enjoys. The fifth ANC administration begins the task of implementing the long-term vision of the nation, the National Development Plan, and the Industrial Policy Action Plan in the midst of a persistently subdued global economic environment. Indeed, by virtue of our economy's deep connection to the global economy, our domestic economy is in turn growing at a subdued rate at the moment. Thus, with this overarching context places greater agency on the implementation of a range of the 847 billion rand worth of infrastructure projects over the next 3 years under the National Infrastructure Plan, as outlined in the State of the Nation address by President Zuma at the center of our work in the course of this term. The implementation of these projects, in which the energy sector is one of the critical components, will catalyze accelerated growth and development of our economy, while simultaneously transforming the quality of that growth. We say that the National Infrastructure Plan provides an opportunity for a qualitatively different trajectory of growth because it is intended to lay a foundation for industrialization and further extension of basic services to our people. Thus, combined with the other interventions by the state, it will help the economy to shift away from the entrenched mineral energy complex, which is largely an extractive and mineral exporting economy, to a thriving, beneficiating industrial base characterized by a sustainable and balanced growth pattern. As outlined in the SONA, such interventions include measures to address the skewed patterns of ownership and production, the spatial legacies of our apartheid past, and the tendencies of the economy towards inequality, dualism, and marginalization. No doubt, these features will not recede automatically or on their own as economic growth accelerates. One such feature that must be addressed is the monopoly domination in our economy, which remains an obstacle to the goals of economic transformation as it sets barriers to entry for emerging enterprises and suppresses competition, and thus builds up inefficiencies and stifles expansion. In our case, the disappointing progress in the implementation of the Liquid Fuels Charter is a case in point. In order to drive inclusive growth, to create employment opportunities and transform society, the most important immediate priority that must be addressed is energy. The achieving of security of supply with an appropriate mix is primary, and this means that there must be the diversification of our energy options to include coal, nuclear, shale gas, renewables, and oil and gas. To achieve this requires, among others, resolving a number of issues, including funding. We are confident that the work of the Energy Security Cabinet Subcommittee, which is responsible for oversight, coordination, and direction of activities for the energy sector, would be critical in resolving these matters in support of the work of the department and the entities. The discussion on the structure of the energy industry, including appropriate regulatory and other measures, must be addressed with a view to ensure that our overall priority of energy security is not compromised. Eskom will continue to play a critical role in the future supply of energy, including in new energy generation initiatives. The role of the private sector would have to be addressed in the context of ensuring an appropriate mix. The medium-term strategic framework and the department's annual performance plan reflect the alignment of our overarching plans, namely the NDP, EPAP, NIP. The challenge is in implementation, and this requires economic departments that are not just policy and regulatory authorities, but also that are active agents with capacity to identify opportunities, challenges, and risks at sectoral level as they arise, to ensure a rapid and effective response, and to monitor implementation and identify blockages as required. Within the energy sector, the mandate from the overwhelming majority of the electorate is clear. It says that the ANC government must lead the country towards producing more, cleaner energy, and promote energy self-sufficiency such that there is domestic security of supply of coal to existing and future power stations. Both traditional and green energy are expanded to ensure a platform for growth and social inclusion, including the use of nuclear power for energy generation in a safe and environmentally sustainable manner. Additional energy is generated through the completion of large power stations. Solar and wind power feed into electricity grid to increase our generation capacity and promote environmental sustainability. Further hydroelectric energy is secured domestically and regionally for the national grid. A further 1.3 million homes are installed with solar water heaters, bringing the total to 1.75 million houses, covering more than 7 million South Africans. The pace of oil and gas exploration, including shale gas exploration by the state and other players in the industry, are intensified as part of the country's effort to ensure national self-sufficiency and energy security while promoting environmental sustainability. Chairperson and honorable members, I now want to turn to the Department of Energy and the entities that fall under it. The following are the outlined strategic outcomes of the department that we support. Security of supply by ensuring that energy supply is secure and demand is well managed. Infrastructure development by facilitating an efficient, competitive, and responsive energy infrastructure network. Regulation and competition certainty by ensuring that there is improved energy regulation and competition in the sector. Universal access and transformation by ensuring that there is an efficient and diverse energy mix for universal access within a transformed energy sector. Environmental assets that are well protected and continually enhanced by cleaner energy technologies. Climate change response by implementing policies that adapt to and mitigate the effects of climate change. Prudent corporate governance through implementation of good governance practices for effective and efficient service delivery. Alignment of key policies with the objectives of the National Development Plan. The following are the entities reporting to the department whose stated work we support. National Energy Regulator of South Africa, National Nuclear Regulator, South African National Energy Development Institute, South African Nuclear Energy Corporation, Central Energy Fund, National Radioactive Disposal Institute. The following are the key focus areas for 2014-2015 of the department that we support. Increase access to electricity with an additional 265,000 grid connections and 15,000 non-grid installations. Increase momentum on the installation of solar water heating units. Finalize the integrated energy plan with more detailed infrastructure plans. Address maintenance and refurbishment backlogs in the electricity distribution industry. Strengthen the liquid fuels industry and facilitate the process leading to the implementation of decisions taken on the nuclear program. Chairperson and honorable members, having considered the strategic plan and the budget vote of the Department of Energy, we recommend that the House supports the budget vote 29 Energy. Furthermore, we make the following recommendations to the Minister of Energy. 1, to conduct an overall assessment of the capacity and funding of the Department of Energy to establish if the department is correctly staffed and funded to deliver on all the areas that need attention for energy resource development in South Africa. 2, to expedite the delivery of the various pieces of legislation and policy documents that are still outstanding. This includes new draft integrated energy plan and the integrated resource plan, which are critical for energy planning in South Africa. 3, to focus on the development of key and critical skills in the various sectors of energy, including, among others, engineering, nuclear, renewable, and electricity distribution. 4, to ensure that security of electricity supply in the short term is made a priority with the various stakeholders and government departments to develop a mechanism that prevents load shedding in South Africa. 5, to place emphasis on the solar water heater program. The department envisaged 1 million units be rolled out by 2015, of which only 400 have been rolled out thus far. Challenges include local content, the involvement of all spheres of government, and maintenance of units. 6, to place emphasis on the rollout of the National Electrification Program. 7, to finalize the proposed gas utilization master plan and report regularly on its progress to the Portfolio Committee on Energy. 8, to ensure that the restructuring of the Central Energy Fund, including its subsidiary companies, and that they are empowered to meet the future demands of South Africa. 9, to ensure that the National Energy Regulator has the requisite skills and resources able to manage the nuclear build program. 10, to assess the legislative framework.
Majola, 1 minute left.
Honorable Chairperson, within the 1 minute left, there are 13 recommendations that we make to the Minister. With the 1 minute that is now left, let me say that given the enormity of the challenges we face, I'm sure I speak on behalf of the Portfolio Committee when I say that we are committed to robust but constructive debates. We have to find solutions together to the energy challenges we face. There should be no room for mudslinging and bickering. As a committee, we shall play our oversight role constructively. We shall support the department and the various entities to fulfill their mandates. But where there is failure and inefficiency, we'll call for action to be taken. Honorable members, our economy is in dire straits. Investors are jittery. Our communities are increasingly restless. The other day,
Honorable Majola,
I heard...
date is on. Time has expired.
Chairperson, the ANC support this budget vote. Together we move South Africa forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Majola. Ons noem nou achtbare lid, Schreeling.
Honourable Minister, Deputy Minister, Chairperson and esteemed colleagues and guests, this is in fact my maiden speech as a fully fledged DA Member of Parliament. And as convention would dictate, I'm supposed to make it non-controversial. It is not my intention to be controversial anyway though, merely to point out how we are going to resolve one of the most important challenges facing this country, namely resolving our protracted energy crisis. The DA is happy that the ANC government has finally recognized that we are in the midst of a major energy crisis, as expressed by the President in his State of the Nation address. It's one thing admitting that we are in a crisis though, but it is quite another thing to implement the solutions that can sustainably get us out of it. As Einstein once said, you cannot solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. Unfortunately, that is precisely what I see happening in this instance. So before we talk about solutions, let us first analyze the kind of ANC thinking that contributed to this crisis in the first place. I've heard a great deal said about the NDP in these budget votes, but the manner in which the ANC dealt with the first NDP for the energy sector, namely the Energy White Paper of 1998, gives us an indication of where things started to go wrong. It was this white paper that accurately predicted that we would experience blackouts in 2006 if new energy generation was not brought on stream. In order to create the conditions conducive for this to happen though, the white paper strongly argued for Eskom's monopoly dominance to be broken through the introduction of a transmission systems operator that would take the transmission grid out of Eskom and place it in a separate independent entity. That was 15 years ago, Minister. The ANC chose to ignore that part of the white paper, just like it is conveniently ignoring those aspects of the NDP that do not fit snugly with its old, outdated ideological thinking. Instead, the ANC government prevented Eskom from building any new generating plants. while simultaneously refusing to reform the electricity sector in a way that would make it conducive for the private sector to enter this monopoly-dominated market. It was this illogical approach by the ANC that predictably led to the blackouts, which started in 2006, and the ushering in of an electricity crisis that we continue to suffer from till this day. Over the last 15 years, all we have in fact seen from the ANC is what can best be described as a Rocky Horror time warp dance. It is just a jump to the left and then a step to the right. Put your hands on your hips and bring your knees in tight. It all looks very impressive until you realize that we have just been dancing in the same spot for the last 15 years, while the energy sector has fallen apart around us. And I won't take a question. A time warp indeed.
Honorable member, is that the point?
Chair,
of order?
can Honorable Khaled show us that dance that he's talking about?
I'll show you later.
Continue.
First, it was the Reds policy, which was meant to solve the crisis in municipal distribution. This was abandoned when it was considered to be unconstitutional, and since then we have seen nothing new from the government to address this burning issue. The backlog on the maintenance of municipal electricity grids has since grown to close on 50 billion rand, and many municipalities are starting to experience localized blackouts as a result. Instead of smart grids, we have broken grids, Minister, and the situation is only getting worse. Quite simply, we need to rethink the entire institutional structure at the municipal level and find novel ways of funding local government differently. The DA therefore welcomes Minister Gordhan opening the broader debate on this in his budget vote. But we would also argue that DORA funds must incentivize achieving certain national objectives like energy efficiency and the uptake of renewable energy and solar water heaters. Instead, the ADAM program of the Energy Department, while responding to an emergency need in municipalities, is simply rewarding the practices of municipalities that have led to an underinvestment in the electricity grids. Then there was the infamous ISMO bill, which was supposed to remove the operations of the grid out of Eskom and create a more level playing field for independent power producers. It was first announced in the President's State of the Nation address in 2010. It was then debated and passed by the Full Energy Committee in 2013, only to have ministerial interference prevented from being debated in the House. At the time, I was called a pathological liar for simply pointing out what many ANC members, and in fact what the Chief Whip confirmed to me at the time, that powerful ministerial interests did not want this bill to be passed. I am sure I will be called many more things while I continue to speak truth to power. And that, Minister, is precisely what we all have to do if we truly want to address this energy crisis. Minister, you need to build a shared consensus around a so-called end-state vision for our electricity sector, something which Minister Brown, in fact, called for in a budget debate. The DA has a clear vision of what that end state should be, but it will require taking on vested monopoly interest. And for the sake of the EFF, I'm talking about state monopoly interests and not what you derogatively refer to as white monopoly interests. Monopoly power must certainly be challenged in our economy, Honourable Chairperson, but the biggest and most inefficient monopoly is in our energy sector. Eskom currently accounts for 95% of electricity generation. It owns and operates the country's entire transmission grid and is responsible for about 42% of electricity distribution. The painful fact is that Eskom's monopoly stranglehold of this sector is holding our whole economy ransom, and it has become a model of perverse economics. On the one hand, it is encouraging its customers not to consume its product, and even paying businesses huge amounts of money not to do so. At the same time, it is selling large amounts of its product at below the cost of producing it to other customers. In addition, it is paying one of its suppliers vast sums of money for inputs that it can't even use. It has also racked up 250 billion rand in debt with very little to show for it, and now thinks that the answers to its woes is to force NERSA to hike its electricity prices in order to pay for its enormous inefficiencies. Clearly, this is a huge hole that has been dug for South Africa and requires a fresh, new approach to solving this crisis. So let me now outline what that approach should be. In fact, we can see small glimmers of it in the one huge success of this department, namely the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Program. This program has seen over 150 billion rand of private investment flow into the energy sector, and the average price of generated electricity fall dramatically over the 3 bid windows, with each one being massively oversubscribed. In fact, the average price of wind-generated electricity has now fallen to 74 cents per kilowatt hour, significantly cheaper than what it will finally cost from Medupi, Minister, whenever that finally comes online. It has also only taken 2 years to construct these plants, and some of them are now already adding electrons to the grid and helping to alleviate our energy crisis. So the success of this program shows that we have to increase the allocated amounts to it. And we should have been using the South African Renewables Initiative, SARI, that was signed at COP17 to utilize grant funding from developed countries to institute a far more ambitious renewable program. But we let that fall away. Honourable Minister, you must also convince your colleague in Land Affairs to change the tenure system in the communal areas so that communities in areas like the Eastern Cape can also benefit from investments into large-scale renewable projects. The fact is, though, that this program is still too small to threaten Eskom's monopoly control, and that is probably why it has been allowed to proceed. We now need to see major IPP procurement programs for baseload energy, especially in the gas sector, along with the long-awaited cogeneration programs that is close on 2,500 megawatts it has been wanting to supply to the grid for many years. A new grid operator must also facilitate wheeling through the grid so that IPPs can contract directly with companies, thereby removing the risk from the state. Instead, what we see unfolding in the background, though, is more of the ANC's outdated state monopoly thinking in the form of the proposed nuclear build program. This program could cost the country upwards of 1 trillion rand and will push up electricity prices to completely unaffordable levels, which in turn will drive down economic growth and with it electricity demand. We could have the absurd situation whereby after spending vast sums of money on this program and over 10 years building these nuclear plants, there will no longer be the customers willing to buy the energy from them. This is the arms deal and the e-toll debacle rolled into one and then magnified by 10, Minister. Almost everyone I speak to from the business sector to civil society has huge concerns over this program, and which are in fact explicitly outlined in government documents like the IRP update and the NDP. It seems the only person truly in favor of this program is the President himself. And given the huge potential for corruption in this program, I suppose it's not that difficult to understand why. The DA will not stand idly by, though, and let the ANC dig this country into an even bigger hole that is already dug in the energy sector. Honourable Minister, it is time to stop digging and embrace a radically different energy future for South Africa. The DA wholeheartedly agrees with the latest IRP update that states we need a flexible energy policy that gives priority to smaller generation technologies with shorter lead times. This fits with our open opportunity vision for South Africa. Open up the grid and give every South African the opportunity to contribute to finding the solutions to our energy crisis. Instead of big state-controlled build programs, the DA will radically overhaul the institutional architecture of our energy sector and unleash the dynamism of our households and companies in responding to this crisis. We will make it easier for households and companies to feed power back into the grid, like Cape Town is in the process of doing. We will also turn all of our diesel-powered generators
1 minute.
over to gas and ensure that there's a conducive environment for investments to flow into putting in place the needed infrastructure to take advantage of the major gas finds in the Southern African region. The DA will also replace the MPRDA with legislation that actually makes it attractive to invest in the oil and gas sector. Instead of the broken municipal grids we have now, the DA will invest in new smart grids that can help us prepare for the uptake of future energy technologies. Ultimately, the DA will replace our currently wholly outdated institutional and infrastructural energy framework with one that is able to take advantage of the major global advances that are being made in the energy field. The time for dancing around this issue is over, as we run the risk of being stuck in an energy paradigm that will render our country uncompetitive. If you are prepared to stop the ANC's time warp dance, Minister, and spend the next 5 years pushing forward significant energy sector reforms that can get us to a more competitive, dynamic and diverse end state for the sector, then the DA will play its part in helping to overhaul our creaking energy system. I thank you.
Dankie, Barrelet Freile. We now call on Honorable Lowe.
Thank you, Chairperson. The EFF, and I think it won't be a surprise to the Portfolio Committee, don't support this budget vote. Don't get excited, so we'll wait. The National Energy Act 34 of 2008, amongst other things, demands and mandates the department to ensure that diverse energy resources are available in sustainable quantities and at affordable prices to the South African economy in support of economic growth and poverty alleviation. While taking into account environmental management requirements, the department is not moving swiftly to fully implement the mandate of this act, and therefore economic development and poverty alleviation will still just remain a dream. What a good story to tell. This has been the weakness of the ANC government for the past 20 years. It is very difficult for them to enforce and implement legislative and policy mandates of their departments. The President, Jacob Zuma, have spoken about nuclear energy as an option for energy source. We still rely very much on coal to generate electricity, which is not environmental friendly. To rely on coal and other environmental damaging sources of energy, it's both unprogressive and unsustainable. We need to focus on Hong Kong that have pursued a greener economy. Our energy sector is very unstable and is currently in a crisis with the current load shedding, especially in winter times. Chairperson, allow me to tell a story of an 11-year-old daughter in 2009 of a mother that was diagnosed with kidney failure and was put on dialysis, and that mainly, relax. Chairperson, please protect me.
If you don't respond, you won't have problems.
If I stop getting excited, it's because of them we are here. Now, I was not even implying that it's a rally. If we want a rally, we'll make it a rally. And now, in 2009, this young 11-year-old were diagnosed with kidney failure and were put on dialysis. Because of the load shedding, Chairperson and Minister, this young girl were put on a peritoneal dialysis in order, it's on a machine that is cleaning the kidneys throughout the night.
Order, Chair.
Honorable Member.
Can the member ask a cheeky question?
No, sit down.
Continue, Honorable Member.
That cleans the kidneys throughout the night. So at 2009, load shedding was happening and her stomach was left with 2 liters of water with fluids in her stomach. This young girl was left throughout the night with these fluids within her body, which the municipality at the time was a DA municipality and which the ANC was government. So both of them as maintained are the same. This budget,
Order,
this
honourable
budget doesn't do
members.
justice to the young girls and young boys that are depending on electricity in poor communities. The integrated integrated electrification program is not designed to adequately provide electricity to all our people. 20 years down the line, in the good story to tell of ANC, we're still having load shedding and 11% of households are still without electricity. Therefore, the need to allocate an adequate, appropriate budget on the IEP becomes a powerful weapon for changing the lives of our poor people. Accountability of funds by municipalities, by the department remains a challenge. Although the department acknowledged this critical question, it's how they still needs to be.
Honourable members, continue.
Thank you. Although the department acknowledged this critical question, is how come there is still stringent mechanisms and systems for monitoring the accountability. Just to acknowledge a problem and not act is not progressive at all. The fact that larger industry that makes billions of profits pay lower tariffs than
Honourable
struggling
member.
law-abiding citizens is a very clear indication
Your
that
time
exactly this
has
regime thinks of the
expired.
poorest of the poor in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, honourable member. Order, honourable members. Honourable member, you'll realize that the following speaker is Honourable Esther Hazen from the IFP, but because of the Honourable Carter's engagement somewhere else, it has been agreed that they will swap. So we now call on Honourable Carter, number 9. Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you. As everyone's been dedicated speeches, I've decided to dedicate my speech as well, and that is to the South Africans and to our nation that is really suffering from the lack of energy in this country. Chairperson, in the State of the Nation address, the President referred to the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Without serious and sustained economic growth, we will, as a nation, not be able to attend to these challenges. In fact, the President said, we require faster economic growth, acknowledging that the economy has grown below its potential over the last 3 years. The President noted that the prolonged and at times violent strikes and the shortage of energy was cause of slow growth. For a considerable period of time, experts have warned government of an impending structural shortage, and our government, under the leadership of the ANC, has denied it. The shortages of generating capacity and cost has had a direct impact on our ability to create a growing economy, hurting our country now and into the future. The completion of Medupi has been delayed and costs have escalated. Has anyone accounted for the mess that we find ourselves in? Has anyone been held accountable? Has anyone accepted any responsibility? Reports indicated further delays. The deadline is supposed to be December, with the first steady output in April next year. But reports in the city press says this appears to have been quietly moved to the end of June next year. Minister, we need to be continually updated with regard to the completion of this project. I won't address the issue of Chancellor House and the ANC enrichment due to time constraints. Safe to say it was deplorable, profiteering by the ANC out of their mistakes at the nation's expense. The President indicated clearly that government will pursue the Shell gas option. This is an emotive issue fraught with significant environmental concerns. It is imperative to give urgent attention to providing a sound policy and legislative process. The matter requires significant public consultation. Chair, another impending crisis is called maintenance, particularly at municipal level. For more than a decade, municipalities have neglected the maintenance of electrical reticulation infrastructure. Recently, the Department of Energy had to once again bail out the capital of KwaZulu-Natal, Pietermaritzburg, with funding to save its ability. It's been painful and it has hurt us. Without energy, we cannot grow the economy. Without a growing economy, we cannot develop as a nation. Without development, we cannot ensure a better life for all. The vision set out in the NDP needs to be put into goals and timeframes.
Honourable Member, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Carter. Sizobiza manje umhlonishwa uKhubisa.
Thank you, Chairperson. The NFP enters into this debate with the understanding that access to electricity is a basic human right, like all other basic human rights, which includes housing, water, and sanitation. Therefore, as the NFP, we feel that for one to have access to electricity, there should be some kind of coordinated and well-integrated service delivery. It is in this light that the NFP advocates for the revamping of slums and hostels to family units with electricity, water, and sanitation. It is also in this light that the NFP will push vigorously for slums clearance so that those people's dignity is restored and they get decent housing, water, and electricity to emphasize. The NFP welcomes and supports the budget of 7.4 billion for this financial year. It is therefore encouraging to hear that the Department of Energy will strive for increase and access to electricity with additional 265,000 grid installations and 15,000 non-grid connections. Most people in rural areas in particular, and townships, have been crying for electricity for years. The Department of Energy still has to tighten measures aiming at monitoring the pace of connecting electricity or installations of solar water healing units, especially, as I've said, in rural areas and townships. Hlungabukuza ukuthi ugesi uphelile ikakhulukazi ngezikhathi zasebusika lapha abantu bewudinga kakhulu khona. Usually the pace is very slow. It takes ages for installations to occur after
1 minute.
After marking of houses. I know again this needs access to water. Strong ties must be forged with COGTA in order for people to have access to electricity. Of course, we need to monitor also ESCOM to know exactly to which department it reports, whether public enterprises or Department of Energy. Having said that, Chairperson, in conclusion, I must say that we need also to educate most people to get engaged in engineering services, electrical engineering, nuclear energy, and all other forms of fuel and gas in order to have a pool of skills. Finally, Chairperson, I must say we need to also ensure that we have a lot of black people who are engaged in the business of energy, gas, and fuel. This has been a monopoly of a few individuals for years. Therefore, as the NFP, we will advocate for more black people to get involved in the business of energy, gas, and fuel. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honourable Khubisa. We now call on the Deputy Minister of Energy, Honourable Majola.
Good morning and thank you, Chairperson. Minister of Energy, Ms. Tina Joemat-Pettersson, Honorable Chairperson of the Energy Portfolio, Fikile Majola, fellow members of the Executive, members of Parliament, Acting DG, senior members of staff, invited guests and stakeholders. I would like to add my voice in thanking the millions of our people who have once again placed their faith and confidence in the African National Congress. We are humbled and will not betray their trust. The ANC government has correctly identified energy as an apex priority for the attainment of economic growth in the fight against the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. It is with the overwhelming mandate that you have given us that we are here today to outline how we plan to tackle the scourge of joblessness in a very challenging global economic environment. We do this as part of a larger collective of government across its 3 spheres. We are cognizant of the fact that we cannot do this alone and will work together hand in glove with our people and the organized formations of labor, business, and civil society. The NDP has outlined the need for an energy sector that promotes economic growth and development, promotes social equity through expanded access to energy services and environmental sustainability through concerted efforts to reduce pollution and mitigation of the effects of global climate changes. The ANC manifesto identified the access to reliable energy supply in all its forms as a priority for this administration. Honorable members, the head of state, President Jacob Zuma's 2014 State of the Nation address has put energy at the center of economic development for the country. The right combination of policies and technologies is strategically important to ensure that the links between economic growth, the increasing energy demand, and the associated energy-related carbon dioxide emissions is managed as we increase our energy generation capacity. It is thus important that our energy policies address issues of energy access, sustainability, affordability, and appropriate quality of services for the end user. I'll expand on this matter a little later. The department and the state-owned enterprises and companies for which it is responsible have a mandate collectively to ensure that security of energy is not only about the provision of electricity, liquid fuels, and gas. Security of energy is also about their sustainable utilization, affordability, and accessibility for our people, business, and industry. It is with this very clear understanding and appreciation of its urgency that the energy plans that we are developing for the short, medium, and long term need to be supported by effective policies, strong institutions, and human resources, effective governance, as well as a regulatory framework that addresses the critical needs for skilling and skills transfer, youth unemployment, and localization of energy inputs so as to grow our local industries. We have been elected on a mandate that prioritized energy security, and our responsibility as the executive is to ensure that the policy trajectory is in keeping with the optimum and efficient energy mix. The rollout of the renewable energy programs have been applauded in a number of quarters, including here. However, there seems to be reluctance to embrace the totality of this energy mix that our people have called for. Coal will continue to be a major source of energy, both for liquid fuels and electricity. We are a country blessed with abundant coal reserves. It is imperative that we provide leadership in the cleaning of our coal for energy production. This is a resource we can ill afford not to exploit. As part of that energy mix, we remain resolute in our belief that the potential for shale gas in the Karoo Basin needs to be exploited. This has the potential to create a new industry and associated skills. The need to ensure that it is exploited with great care to the environment cannot be overemphasized. The use of imported gas will continue, and efforts to explore for more gas offshore will be accelerated. We are aware of a major international company whose drilling rig is about to move into place in the Southern Cape, beginning what we believe is an exciting phase for our country. Honorable members, the infrastructure for liquid fuels has served the country for a number of decades. In addition to the 20-year liquid fuels plan, the department will conduct a vulnerability assessment of existing fuel imports, manufacturing, and distribution infrastructure. This will be done to test the resilience and its ability to respond to various events. The liquid fuel sector has witnessed some changes in the past decade. However, we believe that it offers the greatest opportunity for radical economic transformation. In this regard, the department will continue to work closely with Trade and Industry Department to identify an approach that can accelerate transformation in this sector. This will further be supported by the Small Business Development Ministry. Honorable members, state-owned entities are a critical component in the implementation of our energy policies. It is with this in mind that we began a process of ensuring that we work very closely with them so that we ensure that we provide policy guidance and support where required. Strong, focused, and well-governed entities are required for meeting the challenges of energy security in South Africa. The department is currently engaged in discussions on providing support to the CEF group that will finalize the ongoing restructuring process this year. In his State of the Nation address, the President identified CEF as one of those institutions that will be required to restructure to align with the needs to respond to the challenges and opportunities in the energy sector today. We are acutely aware of the urgency to expedite the finalization of the Integrated Energy Plan, the updated IRP, as well as the Integrated Resource Plan. The policy development processes are urgent and necessary for the industry. However, we do ask that you bear with us as we strive to ensure that these policies serve both the purpose of providing policy certainty as well as ensuring energy security, support the development of local industries, job creation, and skills transfer. Allow me, Honorable Chairperson, to reiterate the democratic government's commitment to give concerted attention to energy efficiency. This is a role for each and every one of us. We all need to know how much energy we consume in our households, in our small enterprises, and indeed in each of the major industry and the industrial users. Once we know, we're in a better position to identify where we can make the necessary reductions. The energy consumption I'm referring to includes electricity, liquid fuels, natural and petroleum gas. Inefficient appliances need to be discarded or replaced. When purchasing vehicles, fuel efficiency must be a key consideration. The department and the National Energy Efficiency Agency within SANEDI, working with, amongst others, the National Business Initiative, will ensure that energy efficiency programs touch every facet of our lives. These programs will include the implementation of the smart grids and energy efficient tax incentive schemes. As already alluded to by the Minister, nuclear energy plays an important role in the energy security of our country. Going forward, the Nuclear Energy Company of South Africa will play a pivotal role in the localization of our nuclear build program, which is in line with our energy policy and in particular with the IRP 2010. I would like to pause here so as to emphasize a point which we somehow seem to forget or overlook. We have been utilizing nuclear to produce energy for decades. And in fact, our host city, Cape Town, is basically powered by nuclear energy. We have the requisite expertise and know-how to ensure continued safe utilization of nuclear for power generation. On the new nuclear build program, the department is fully cognizant of the fact that providing regulatory oversight over the new nuclear build program will require a strengthened and a better capacitated regulatory body. Together with the national nuclear regulator, the department will ensure that capacity enhancement for both human capital and facilities continues to be the strategic thrust of the regulator over the MTF period. Over and above this, the NNR is in discussions with various stakeholders to establish a nuclear and radiation safety center of expertise to create a pipeline of skills. This center, which will be housed in one of the local universities, will involve collaborations of the NNR with its international partners as well as local stakeholders. The National Radioactive Waste Disposal Institute was established already in 2013-2014 financial year, with a mandate to fulfill the institutional obligation of managing the disposal of radioactive waste on a national scale. The board of the NRWDI is currently working with the department to ensure it is operational. NERSA, as the country's energy regulator, will, over the medium term, be focused on improving oversight of the regulated industries by conducting compliance audits and inspection, ensuring licenses and setting tariffs. NERSA will do the above in order to encourage investments in the sector, encourage new entrants, and improve competition. Honorable members, if we are to achieve the energy vision as contained in the NDP, skills development in the energy sector is of critical importance. Given the planned energy infrastructure investments, the country will require substantial investment in technical skills such as engineers, technicians, artisans, project and program managers. This is absolutely essential. The department will be engaging with relevant stakeholders in both the public and private sectors to address the above challenges. In the meantime, we have formed partnerships with the Energy and Waste SETA, as well as the Chemical Industry Sector Education and Training Authority, to increase the scope of energy training in order to meet the skills needs in the energy sector. The critical skills identified are catered for in the approved sector skills plans of the aforementioned SETAs. Chairperson, we plan to leverage the benefits of the massive investment in the energy sector by ensuring that our departmental programs display a greater degree of responsiveness to the needs of our people, such as the empowerment of women and youth, whether it's through the Integrated National Electrification Program, the rollout of solar water heating programs, the Independent Power Producers Program, or the transformation of the liquid fuels sector. We'll continue to strengthen interventions and programs aimed at capacity building among vulnerable sectors to enable their meaningful participation in the energy sector in support of the country's transformation agenda. This is an agenda that guides us on a daily basis. As part of the Decade for Women as declared by the African Women, honorable members, we'll expand our involvement in the SADC region through various programs which include a planned workshop on clean energy education and empowerment to be held next month. The objective of the workshop is to increase participation and awareness of opportunities in the clean energy sector in our continent. We would urge you to follow these developments because I am convinced that all of you here are very committed to supporting the objectives of the Women's Month in August. Chairperson, a month ago, we lost one of our female staff members at the hands of somebody that she trusted, somebody who was supposed to be protecting her. The department is following up on the criminal proceedings and giving support to the family that has lost this beloved member. We intend to embark on an awareness campaign for our staff to sensitize them about gender-based violence and abuse. None of us can afford to turn a blind eye when the scourge of gender-based violence continues to afflict our society. our communities, and our homes. The socialization of our young boys and girls is key if we are to break the cycle of violence and build responsible citizens that know their rights, but also understand and appreciate that for every right, there are responsibilities. Honorable members, this is a topic that is obviously very close to all of us, and both the minister and I are very committed to making sure that we create an conducive environment in the department and hopefully impact on broader societies with the people that we interact with. Abuse in whatever form can never be acceptable. In this case, we lost a life, and we continue to lose life in this country. So as we work towards building a better South Africa, it cannot be divorced from these issues. Honorable members, the energy programs require a capable department that is able to respond with the necessary agility. To this end, we will review the structures of the department, ensure that there are the requisite skills and ability to meet the urgent demands imposed by the need for security of energy. This we will extend to the state-owned entities as they are an important component for the implementation of our policies and plans. Honorable members, I would like to conclude by saying that while I've been in this energy portfolio for a very short time, and this is the first time I have this opportunity to address you, I do believe that as a country, we have the commitment and the ability to respond to His Excellency President Jacob Zuma's call for the radical transformation of the energy sector. The Department of Energy and its entities is ready to meet the challenge, and working together, we can achieve more. I thank you all on behalf of Team Energy.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I now call upon Honorable T. Mahambehlala.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Minister of Energy, Ms. Tina Joemat-Pettersson, Honorable Deputy Minister of Energy, Ambassador Thembisile Majola, Honorable Chair of the Portfolio, Mr. Fikile Majola, and Deputy Ministers present here, Honorable Members of Parliament and invited guests, allow me to greet you. On Friday, the 18th July, the world and South Africans in particular, from all walks of life, celebrated Mandela Day. It was indeed a sober moment for all of us to celebrate what Madiba stood for, on the occasion of his first birthday anniversary since his departure. Mandela and his generation of cadres have left an indelible legacy of selflessness and commitment to the ideals of freedom for all, of which we must do everything possible to preserve and expand so that each human being can attain his or her full potential without any hindrance. It was the generation of Madiba who proclaimed to the world that freedom in their lifetime is what they will fight for. And yes, indeed, they attained that objective. Equally so, they stated in our RDP program, which is a practical expression of the Freedom Charter, that we must all strive towards a better life for all. In that equivocally statement of the better life for all, it was their strongest belief that indeed South Africa can become a better and just society where provision of services and everyone's full potential is harnessed without looking at his or her skin color, gender, class, ethnicity, and geographic location. Honorable members, we are indeed proud that 20 years in our freedom and democracy, our country, South Africa, is a better place than it was before 1994. We can state boldly, without any fear or contradictions, that ours is a society under construction towards the ideals of Madiba and his generation committed 67 years of their youth and adult life into. As part of the ideals of a better life for all our people, the ANC government since 1994 has implemented a massive electrification program that has changed and continues to change the lives of our people better. Today, we have more households that are connected to the grid for electricity as compared to what apartheid government and its successive could achieve. Chairperson, as this House gathered to debate about how to make South Africa a better place, fewer things rival the provision of energy to our people. This is something which was well understood by the apartheid regime. They knew that, like education, if you deprive a nation of electricity or energy, you deprive a nation of economic viability, you deliberately set back a nation and set up some for continuous privilege. When the ANC government leaped forward to create a democratic South Africa, only 67% had electricity. On top of being deprived dignity, on a daily basis, the majority of South Africans were plugged deliberately into darkness. Democracy has not only brought back the dignity of South Africans for some, they have been literally pulled out of the dark. In other words, honorable members, electricity has become far more accessible now than it was in the past decade. Over 5.2 million households were connected to the grid between 1994 and 2010 alone. Our work in this regard is not yet done. We need to continue to provide electricity to our communities efficiently and consistently. To this, some respond and say, the only way we can do this is by privatizing critical elements within ESCOM. This is, of course, reliant on the capitalist principle. The market is the most efficient allocator of resources, this in case of parties like Democratic Alliance. The failure to understand South Africa is developmental state informs such asymmetrical suggestions. As President of the ANC stated on the 8th of January, the developmental state should maintain its strategic role in shaping the key sectors of the economy. This means that we need to strengthen the role of the state-owned enterprises and agencies in advancing our overarching industrial policy and economic transformation objectives. South Africans, we must be vigilant of the demagogues who time and time again claim to be paragons of perfection. Lest we forget, in 2011, the very same DA, the Honorable Maimane leads, used the plight of poor people in the Western Cape. I am not sure, however, whether Maimane will remember this because he was probably not part of the DA yet. A television advertisement by the DA claimed that they had delivered electricity in Tambo Square informal settlement in Cape Town, only to find out it was Izinyoka Nyoka, and that it was the party that was abusing a vulnerable poor community member, Dombikai Selugalo, to peddle lies among South Africans that the party has delivered electricity to her house. The head of campaigns and organizational development at the time, Honorable Fikile Mbalula, found out the area had not experienced a much service delivery from DA-led government, the city of Cape Town, since the party took over the ANC in 2006. Shockingly, he also found that the star of the DA advert was paid with a voucher to buy food by a DA white man, to heap praises on the DA in front of the camera for delivering electricity and still relied on candles and paraffin. The DA moved swiftly to provide an illegal electricity connection to Lugano's shack. This is an illegal act that ESCOM has often Kong described as the work of Izinyoka, which claims many innocent lives, particularly in the informal settlement. Under the DA, poor people continue to be used as pawns for cosmetic effects. Honorable Chairperson,
1 minute left.
Honorable Chairperson, we want to see more cases like Tulamela Municipality in Vembe, Limpopo. This municipality had electricity backlog of about 27,000 households. The municipality, with the assistance of Department of Energy, obtained 90 million and completed 4,500 connections in 2012-2013, while 2013 and 2014, an amount of 70 million was obtained, which resulted in 4,000 connections. In addition, ESCOM has also completed about 6,500 connections in the same time, resulting in 15,000 connections being done within 2 financial years. The overall backlog in Tulamaashe municipality is currently standing at 12,000, and at this rate, we will be completing in this financial year some of these 12,000. And this is one of the good stories that we should tell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call upon Honorable J.A. Esterhazen.
Honourable Chairperson, as the population in South Africa rapidly increases, so does the need to meet a rising energy demand in economical, social, responsible, renewable and sustainable ways. Reliance on clean and renewable energy sources could save the country from high carbon volumes and environmental hazards. Coal is at present the greatest and most dominant source of energy, producing 70% of energy in South Africa. The renewable energy sources constitute approximately 8% of energy, which means there's a massive margin for expansion in this area of energy generation, and still a long way to go in ensuring more energy is produced from renewable energy sources. Excuse me. In his State of the Nation address, President Zuma mentioned a new nuclear power station that would contribute 9,000 megawatts of energy. But energy choices made today will fundamentally affect the country's ability to combat climate change and create a clean and safe energy for all South Africans. In addition, one must also take in consideration of the recent statement by the National Union of Mine Workers, who warned that they do not support any calls to employ nuclear energy as a part of the solution for sustainable energy. Honourable Chairperson, South Africa's tumbling economy cannot take another knock from unions who are seemingly able to dictate policy to government. With increasing concern over whether consumers will be able to afford Eskom's over-rising tariffs, and with only 60% of distributed electricity creating revenue, the rest being lost through illegal connections, Eskom's debt rose by 11% to 16.6 billion rand. Added to this is the steady declining sales trend as more users begin to diversify their energy mix.
Left with 1 minute.
Eskom had 14 gas turbines built in Cape Province as an emergency backup, and said that not more than one would be used at a time. This is the most expensive method of energy supply, costing approximately 2.7 Rand per kilowatt hour, compared to an average cost of 59 cents per kilowatt hour. And all 14 are currently in use, contributing to Eskom's use loss. Eskom's appear to be in a way over its head, and government will need to intervene and take drastic and immediate action. The warning signs are already there, showing in the Reserve Bank last week revised our growth forecast down to 1.7%. Mostly because of the prevailing uncertainty in the energy sector. Having said all that, the IFP support this vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call upon Honorable C. Dudley.
Thank you, Chair. When South Africa has a clear development plan and growth is the objective, suggestions that Eskom customers save electricity are hard to swallow. Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan's reference to South Africa's tight energy supply damaging the economy seems more to the point. The ACDP welcomes the expansion of renewable energy in the country with the new solar power plant near Kimberley and the Jeffreys Bay wind farm of 60 turbines, which is exceeding its expected 41% capacity factor and will feed around 460,000 megawatts a year into South Africa's grid. The program at Jeffreys Bay has raised a lot of investor interest. A clearer commitment by government in terms of the long-term scale of renewables procurement program would help to allay investor uncertainty. The ACDP commends all concerned on the 47 renewable energy projects concluded in 2012 and 2013, which included the first South African utility-scale PV facility in the Northern Cape. We also commend the City of Cape Town for signing an agreement for the establishment of a pilot plastics to oil plant at its Kraaifontein Integrated Waste Management Facility. But, and this is a big but, why a foreign firm when there are local solutions which just require funding? Government support only for commercialization of already developed technologies is seriously problematic, as many South African investors have come up with innovative solutions to our problems. With sufficient resources to develop, we could have more than sufficient sunlight for the we have more than sufficient sunlight for the delivery of liquefied natural gas, for own consumption as well as export, and to extract atmospheric water using solar power to provide for communities in arid areas. Now, 2 years ago, the ACDP was hopeful that government would move on the potential of the Rovuma Basin gas find in Mozambique. Gas emits about half the amount of pollution that coal does for the same amount of electricity generated, and as an energy feedback for the production of synthetic fuels, could also serve to decrease South Africa's carbon emissions. Honourable Minister, why does the revised 20-year energy draft plan seem to ignore this Rovuma Basin? It is the world's 4th largest known natural gas deposit and could solve Eskom's immediate energy crises and avoid the costly construction of a 3rd new coal power station. Surely a pipeline is the most sensible thing, and it should absolutely be in the IRP. Another concern, Honourable Minister, is the current status of the new nuclear build. There is a need for greater clarity. The ACDP is calling on you for a full inquiry into the current state of our existing nuclear industry. Kuiberg has passed its sell-by date and increasingly been shut down for repairs at huge cost, and the department seems to want to extend its life just as the Safari 1, whilst nuclear reactors the world over that were built in the same era have officially closed down. Lastly, good. Okay. The ACDP will support this vote in the interests of going forward despite the many reservations.
Thank you very much. I now call on Honorable Artie Mabunda.
Na kensa mfambisi wa ntirho ntshamo wa xitulu eka nhlengeletano ya siku ra namuntlha. Eka holobye wa ndzawulo ya swa matimba kumbe energy na mpfuneti wa yena, eka yindlo hinkwayo, eka vaholobye lava va koteke ku ta eka siku ra namuntlha. Ndzi rhandza ku mi xeweta. Ndimacheloni. Honorable Chairperson, it gives me great pleasure to address this august house on an important occasion like this, where we debate about the energy budget which the ANC support. Honorable members will recall that in 2007, on the 52nd National Conference of the ANC held in Polokwane, The ANC, amongst other things, pursued a program of economic transformation based on the following pillars: ensuring security of supply of energy sources and pursuing the energy mix that includes clean and renewable sources to meet the demands of our fast-growing economy. Honorable Chairperson, the ANC took up a leading role in global debates on environmental justice, including through participation in the Rio Earth Summit and the South Africa-hosted World Summit on Sustainable Development of 2002. At these historic forums, the environmental dimensions of the development challenges facing Africa and the countries of the South, driven by its sustainable development orientation, the ANC will continue to ensure that South African economy benefits from the global potential of the renewable energy sector, including through the provisions of incentives for investment in renewable energy infrastructure, as well as human resources, energy to ensure that institutions and companies are ready to take full advantages of renewable opportunities. Moreover, Chairperson, to promote the realignment of institutional mechanisms which will fast-track the utilization of renewable energy to mitigate climate change effects. Honorable Minister, it is therefore not unexpected that the ANC manifesto enjoins the ANC-led government to ensure that solar and wind power feed into the electricity grid to increase South Africa's generation capacity and promote environmental sustainability. Further to that, the government is obligated to install solar water in 1.3 million homes. The call is therefore made to the department as the implementing organ of a state to promote and fulfill the manifesto commitments to enhance South Africa's energy mix in general, and in particular to install solar water heaters to houses as per manifesto. Honorable Chairperson, the Constitution requires government to ensure that national energy resources are adequately tapped and delivered to cater for the needs of the nation, and that the production and distribution of energy be sustainable and lead to an improvement in the standard of living citizens. Honorable Chairperson, the renewable energy that is produced from sustainable natural sources will contribute to sustainable development. It is a part to note, amongst others, that South Africa experiences some of the highest levels of solar radiation in the world, which are available to meet most energy requirements in South Africa. South Africa recognizes that emissions of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide from the use of fossil fuels such as the coal and petroleum products has led to increasing concerns about global climate change. Given increased opportunities for energy trade, particularly with the Southern African region, government is committed to pursue energy security by encouraging diversity of both supply sources and primary energy carriers. As most are indigenous and naturally available, security of energy supply is thus improved and not disrupted by short-term international crisis as it often occurs in relation to petroleum
You've got
sources.
1 minute left.
Chairperson, with this 1 minute, I just want to privilege some members here that the department has an integrated energy centers established in 2 centers. That is Ulundi and Bizana. That in these centers, members of community were able to benefit through projects, through community projects. The IEC
Thank you,
provides
Honourable
access to safe. Thank you, Chairperson. The ANC adopted the budget.
I now call upon Honorable G. McKay.
Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Minister, Deputy Minister, fellow South Africans. It is a great privilege to stand before this House today as a newly elected MP to deliver my maiden speech in the service of the people of our nation. I'm reminded at this time that despite the vagaries of our past, we are now and forever one nation with a single and shared future. I'm also cognizant of the overwhelming desire of the South African people that their politicians place partisan interests aside and work together. To that end, Honourable Minister, I wish to assure you of my unwavering commitment to the country's constitution and my sincere desire to work with you in the interests of our people. House Chairperson, we are not blind. In fact, we are acutely aware that 300 years of colonialism and apartheid have entrenched upon us severe development challenges that are further magnified by economic forces of globalization. We acknowledge the continuing legacy and intergenerational consequences of colonialism and apartheid. We are intensely aware that undesirable colonial and apartheid patterns of capital accumulation have continued unabated under successive ANC governments. We note too that this is the case in the energy sector, where the ANC has actively defended the status quo, despite this not being in the broader interests of our country or our people. House Chairperson, it is broadly accepted that South Africa has followed a heavily capital and energy-intensive development trajectory, powered almost entirely by the extraction, sale, and use of coal. With its roots in the mineral discoveries of the late 1860s and 1880s, and known as the Mineral Energy Complex, this development trajectory is a product of the original compromises established between British colonial masters and the country's original industrialists. Along with cheap energy, the colonial and later the apartheid-era state coupled cheap labour. Cheap energy and cheap labour were a boon to South Africa's mines and the narrow industries associated with mining. The social consequences of the state-aided policy were, however, devastating. In 1996, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission found that the mining industry's involvement with the state in the formulation of oppressive policies and practices that resulted in low labour costs can be described as first-order involvement in apartheid. Firmly entrenched in this perspective, Honourable Speaker, the DA expresses its concerns about the failure of this and all previous ANC governments to shift South Africa's development trajectory towards a broader industrial path in which a diversity of industries and sectors are engaged and can compete for capital and appropriately priced energy within a framework of fair labour practices. And yet, the ANC is doing nothing to achieve real structural change in the energy sector. No, Chairperson, the mineral energy complex is left untouched as this government refuses to dismantle Eskom's monopoly or reduce our country's dependence on coal. As such, the continued application of this apartheid-era logic will continue to reverberate across South Africa's economy and society. With the minutes remaining, let me draw your attention to the following burning issues. First, I call on the Minister to come clean on the extent of the energy crisis affecting the nation. The idea that Kusile and Medupi will mean a return to business as usual. Chairperson?
Yes, a point of order.
If I can continue.
You are given 8 minutes, I think. Honorable members, let us respect members that are addressing this House for the first time. Let's give them time to address the House. Thank you very much. Continue, Honorable Member.
I call on the Minister to come clean on the extent of the energy crisis affecting the nation. The idea that Kusile and Medupi will mean a return to business as usual for South Africa is at the same time troubling as well as misleading. You see, Honourable Speaker, the Honourable Minister's own officials have admitted privately that the 5% growth promised by His Excellency the President is in fact a complete impossibility. As the department itself knows, but isn't yet saying, is there's insufficient energy flow available in the economy to achieve the economic growth promised by the President. It therefore goes without saying that just as 5% economic growth is a white lie of epic proportions, so too then are the President's promises on jobs. There can be no jobs without sufficient energy to drive economic growth. Second House Chairperson, I express my concern that South Africa will most likely fail to reach its greenhouse gas emission targets. Let me be clear, we cannot for a moment accept another bout of ANC AIDS-style denialism. Global warming is a fact. Eskom is the world's second largest power utility emitter of CO2 globally. Fact. Kusile alone will produce 37 million tons of CO2 equivalent emissions annually. Fact. Coal emissions continue to have a disastrous effect on the health of our people. Fact. A recent study by Greenpeace found sorry, Honourable Member, if I may continue. A recent study by Greenpeace found that air pollution emissions from Eskom's coal-fired power plants are currently causing an estimated 2,200 premature deaths per year. This includes approximately 200 deaths of young children. The economic cost to the South African society of this pollution is 30 billion rand a year. It is unacceptable that the costs of mining, energy production, and energy-intensive industrial production are externalized while profits are privatized. As such, the DA welcomes the department's encouragement of renewables as well as carbon capture storage technology as solutions to our ever-expanding carbon footprint. The DA, however, believes that an aggressive uptake of renewables within the energy mix via the inclusion of independent power producers will far more successfully lower carbon emissions while at the same time introduce much-needed competition into the energy sector. House Chairperson, an area in which the country can be justifiably proud is the record number of private households that have been included on the national grid. To date, 4 million households have been electrified since 1991. Although a good story to tell, the story does not seem to be heading for a happy ending. No House Chairperson, for example, government's ambition to reach universal access by this year, 2014, will not be met. Instead, claims that perhaps 2021, 2022, or as the Minister indicated, maybe 2025, is supposedly a more realistic timeframe. But even this new target seems overly ambitious when you consider that electrification have dropped from approximately 400,000 per annum to just 150,000 a year. Finally, House Chairperson, let me take this opportunity to address the elephant in the room. The proverbial elephant I'm referring to is, of course, the Minister of Energy. It is a matter of public record that the Public Protector has made adverse finding against the Minister in a previous capacity.
There's a point of
Is
order.
it parliamentary for the member to refer to the members of parliament as elephants, as an animal?
Yes, Honourable Member, but can you just withdraw that?
My statement was the proverbial elephant, not actually that the Minister is an elephant.
Yes,
it's anyone's guess.
Order, Member, just withdraw it.
I withdraw. It's anyone's guess as to the President's reasoning in appointing Minister Jomat Peterson, especially as the President has yet to apply his mind as to the findings of the Public Protector. The proposed procurement of additional nuclear capacity, which will constitute the most expensive public tender process in South Africa's history, reflects the magnitude and importance of the decisions to be taken by the Energy Minister. To you, Minister, I say, South Africa can ill afford another arms deal scandal. As such, Honourable Chairperson, I call on the Minister to ensure the highest level of transparency in the procurement process. By this, I mean that the Portfolio Committee of Energy actively provide oversight on the tender process.
Your time has expired, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Gona bjale re bitsa mohlomphegi Motswaledi Matlala.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Honorable members of the committee, Mr. Acting Director General of the Department and his official, the Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources, fellow South Africans, Dumela. Is it afternoon now? Yes, good afternoon. Tobet. Honorable Chairperson, let me start by explaining energy security, because it appears that we all do not have the same understanding that energy security includes intervention on both the supply and demand sides. And we are not limited to ensuring supply in meeting our objectives. Energy security is defined to include ensuring supply, managing demand, and ensuring appropriate quality of service for the end user. The fourth administration, Comrade Chair, established the Department of Energy in 2009 as a result of the split of the mining and security portfolios within the former Department of Minerals and Energy. The split allowed greater focus on energy issues, given energy challenges in the period that led to major power disruptions. There was a need, Comrade Chair, to focus on energy security as mandated by the ruling party, the African National Congress, through various mechanisms including policy, legislative and regulatory amendments, forward planning and implementation plans. Again, Comrade Chair and Honorable Minister, I need to point out that the Department of Energy is the policy department and implementation of various critical interventions when it's done through ESCOM, municipalities, independent power producers, Petro South Africa, concessionaries, etc. The department is responsible for creating the policy and regulatory environment that is conducive for investment to support and grow the economy. What are the challenges that confront our country, Comrade Chair and the Minister? We can summarize them as follows. There is a need to reduce escalating energy prices, be it for electricity or petroleum products, to cushion the adverse impact on the poor. There is also a need to transform the energy sector and bring more historically disadvantaged into the economic mainstream, over and above increasing access by ordinary South Africans to modern energy careers. There is a need, Comrade Chair and Honourable Minister, to implement our plans to keep the light on in the short to medium term in the context of ESCOM challenges. This includes finding a solution to finance the various projects in a way that balances steep electricity tariff increase on one hand and on the other against blackouts and stunted economic growth due to lack of energy capacity. There is a need to improve energy efficiency and demand-side management. The Deputy Minister spoke to that earlier on, Comrade Chair, that there is a need short-term power solution that would assist to meet the demand until Medupi and Kusisile are fully operational. There is a need to secure our liquid fuel supply chains, including crude oil supply, refining and distribution. Honorable members and honorable ministers, the challenge and the ANC administration is ready to provide solutions as they know what the challenges are. This ANC government ensured that a new household electrification strategy was approved by Cabinet in June 2013 to address electrification backlogs and to ensure universal access by 2025. This will be done by means of utilizing grid extension, but about 10% of backlogs will be addressed by means of non-grid PV solar system. This is in line with the proposals of the NDP for reaching universal access, but the target date set in the NDP is 2030. I think Honorable Mr. Khailing is listening very attentively. In 2002, the department introduced the first ever industry transformation charter as an effective tool for transformation in the petroleum and liquid fuels industry. The liquid fuel charter. 10 years later, an assessment of the extent of compliance by the oil industry was commissioned and showed that there is still a long way to go. Radical transformation must happen in this sector. Radical transformation must happen in this sector. Energy efficiency is at the core of our energy security strategy. Given its cost effectiveness, speed of deployment and job creation potential, intervention in public buildings, industry and the residential sector are pillars in the energy efficiency strategy and action plan produced by the Department of Energy. Last year, this ANC government promulgated the EE tax incentive scheme, in terms of which companies can offset their tax payment in proportions to the amount of energy they have saved and which have been independently verified. You are rewarded for saving power if you are doing like that. The Department of Energy also published the biofuel incentive framework for public command in order to facilitate the mandatory blending of ethanol into our liquid fuels. The increased cultivation of energy crops like sorghum and sugar will be coupled with agrarian reform to result in more job opportunities and transformation of the economy. The biofuels framework must be accelerated, Comrade Chair. Government must finalize the regulatory framework to introduce clean fuel in the petroleum sector. The financing mechanism must be finalized soon in respect of the clean fuel program to facilitate the necessary investment that refiners need to produce the environmentally friendly liquid fuels. On nuclear energy, Honorable Minister, the department must work with other government departments to develop a roadmap for the implementation of the nuclear program. In the meantime, the department must continue to develop the localization, financing, funding, skills development, and uranium beneficiation strategies to support the nuclear new building program. Electrification has more than doubled from 36% of the population in 1994 to 86% of the formal housing in 2013. More than 5.8 million households to date have access to electricity. A very good story to tell the Honorable Mr. Greyler. This financial year, more funds have been allocated to ensure that bulk electricity infrastructure is in place to ensure that higher number of new connections can be made in the years to come. We applaud the fact that in the last 5 years alone, just over 1.1 million new connections were achieved. Since the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program was initiated in March 2010, the Department of Energy has committed to purchase 3,000 megawatts from IPPs. The program attracted over 150 billion rands in foreign direct investment. During the construction phase, just under 13,000 jobs have been created, of which about 7,500 were taken up by the youth, young people of this country. That is the ANC government working for you. Working for you. We are aware of the fact that the department works closely with immediate stakeholders such as state-owned entities and companies that invest in the energy sector outside this country, all spheres of government, to ensure alignment in the areas of political, security, and economic understanding of global trends and implications in the energy sector. Keep quiet. The elders are still speaking. Energy security in our country depends, amongst others, on diversity of supply sources of energy. This is particularly true for gas, crude oil, and nuclear fuel, as well as electricity. Our country relies on crude oil imports from a number of countries around the world. A significant portion, about 40%, of our crude oil imports originates from within the African continent. Government needs to constantly ensure that the countries from which petroleum and petroleum products is sourced continue to view South Africa as a preferred destination petroleum, particularly crude oil. It is therefore, Comrade Chair, going to be important forward to ensure that energy is at the center of our foreign relations. The Department of Energy must work very closely with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation in this regard. These departments need to continuously identify new partnerships with countries from which we can source energy while nurturing existing ones. The ANC supported this budget vote. I thank you.
I now call upon the Honorable Minister of Energy to come and close the debate.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I wish to thank all the members who participated in this debate. Many matters and challenges have been raised, of which we believe together as public representatives of our people, we shall be seized with seeking and finding amicable solutions. Again, I wish to emphasize that energy security and sustainable supply of energy to our citizens is a collective responsibility. Constructive matters that have been raised here will be given the necessary attention in seeking to keep our lights on, in keeping our economy productive, in keeping our cars on the road, our trains in the rail lines, and our planes in the sky. The continued focus on Eskom is much welcomed and in many respects justifiable. But Eskom does not report to the Department of Energy. The Eskom reports to the Department of Public Enterprises, So please, when you direct questions of Eskom to the Department of Energy, we'll have a standard response that Eskom does not report to the Department of Energy. I need to assure this House and our people that as government in particular, the Departments of Public Enterprise, Treasury and ourselves are engaging on the challenges relating to Eskom, and we realize that it is the three departments in particular who should find solutions to these problems. I want to thank the Deputy Minister, Ambassador Majola, the Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee and the Select Committee for their guidance. I would like to thank the senior officials, the Acting Director General in particular, for their continued support and for the achievements of our goals. My appreciation is also extended to the state-owned entities, the energy sector stakeholders for their invaluable support. I would like to extend my gratitude to SASOL for their support of the consultative fora, which we will continue having, and we wish to encourage the private sector to assist us in having these consultative fora. The gas utilization master plan will assist us in our infrastructure development, which will be necessary to open up the gas market for residential, commercial, and industrial sectors. These developments herald a new era in the exploitation of this resource. I wish to invite the private sector to prepare for their contribution in this regard. We'll release the outcomes of a gas feasibility study that is being completed with collaboration with Transnet, Petro SA, Eskom and government. The prospect for gas to replace imported crude oil in the transport sector is very high on the government agenda. The development of shale gas cannot be dismissed or ignored. On the contrary, we should be learning from others on how to best exploit this resource in the least intrusive and environmentally prudent way. In October 2013, the Minister of Energy determined 2015 as the date by which crude oil refining companies will have to blend biofuels into petrol and diesel on a mandatory basis. This has provided certainty to the funders of the potential biofuel manufacturers, and their product will indeed enter the market through oil companies. Thousands of jobs are expected to be created through the biofuels value chain. We intend to strengthen the policy and planning capacity within our department so that indeed we have policy certainty. The Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill will be passed and has to be passed in this cycle. The National Energy Regulatory Amendment Bill, which will improve credibility of the decision-making process, has to be passed. The Gas Amendment Bill will promote an efficient, competitive and responsive economic growth and leveraging available gas resources. I ask the members of this committee to insist in the passing of this legislation. The Independent Systems and Market Operator Bill to assist with the planning of generation, implement electricity dispatch, coordinate electricity, wholesale by generators, and act as buyers of electricity also needs to be passed. The support of the Portfolio Committee is sought to process these critical pieces of legislation, and in so doing, further support the efforts towards a more responsive energy system. Honourable members, Team Energy is energized to move South Africa forward, but we need the private sector, labour, and the public sector to move energy forward. I invite all South Africans to be part of Team Energy. It is my honour to present before this House the 2014-2015 budget vote of the Department of Energy. I apologize to those in the overflow room where the connection has been erratic, and we hope that we'll be able to give them a better copy of the budget speech. Chairperson, I thank you. Members of the committee, I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, for having closed the debate. Members are reminded that the EPC on Performance Monitoring and Evaluation and Statistics South Africa will meet at 14 hours in the Old Assembly Chamber. That concludes the debate and the business of this extended public committee. The committee will now rise.